Now, Prince Andrew doesn't say, I didn't do it. No, instead he says, I have no recollection. Over and over. And here you'll see why the infamous BBC interview didn't clear his name, it buried it. Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're new here, then what I do is different from anywhere else because I strip away everything apart from the words that are said by the people at the center of the story. And then I use my process of statement investigation to give you the key to seeing where the truth could be, where deception could be happening, and the motivations of the person talking as well. It's a process that I use with investigators, corporate clients, and the media to get a deep understanding of what is being said. And this is a live episode, and I am live, so you guys can get involved. If you are live, then do get involved in the chat. Let me know your thoughts, your questions, your comments and opinions as well. And there's also a poll for you to get involved with in the live chat too. If you're part of the replay crew, great. Let me know in the comments. Just drop a comment in, say, hey, replay crew here. It all helps. And I read nearly every single comment that I get. Sometimes there's a lot and, I can't keep up. We're going to deal with Prince Andrew in this episode. It's been a busy old week for Prince Andrew. Last week, he announced that he lost his titles, wasn't going to use his royal titles, although in a crazy way of the royal family, he still has the titles. He's just not going to use them. And also, he's still Prince because I don't understand why. So I'm not really sure what happened with the fact that he lost his titles. And then this week, Virginia Giuffre's memoir was published, telling all sorts of stories. So the heat has really been on Andrew this week. I'm told there could be some breaking news about Prince Andrew when we are live as well. So I'll keep an eye on my phone down there and see if there's any breaking news on him that arrives while we are on. Now, we're going to break down the BBC interview that he did a few years ago. It was a car crash interview. I've had a look at this before, but through the prism of how he talking about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Here, I'm going to focus only on what he says about Virginia Giuffre and his meetings or not meetings with her, in his words. So I'm going to focus on them. No video, no audio clips on this one because it is a BBC production and they are very copyright sharp. So if we used the actual video of the interview, this episode would disappear faster than Andrew's reputation. So with that in mind, I'm going to be doing all the talking. Let's go and look at the start of the bits I want to look at. Emily Maitlis is the person doing the interview. And she says to him, July of this year, Epstein was arrested on charges of sex trafficking and abusing dozens of underage girls. One of the Epstein accusers, Virginia Roberts, Prince Andrew says, yeah, for some reason, acknowledging this, or maybe he has something ready to say, which is why he kind of interrupts the question because he's got, we wouldn't expect him to go into this interview without having things ready to say. If he went in without any preparation, then that would be really, really bad. But he does interrupt with a yeah. Emily carries on, and Sheila says in the chat, Emily did a fantastic job. Completely agree. And we'll see how Andrew knows she's doing a fantastic job later on when we're analyzing some of his words. Emily continues. So Virginia Roberts has made allegations against you. She says she met you in 2001. She says she dined with you, danced with you at Tramp nightclub in London. She went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell, your friend. Your response, and Andrew's response is, I have no recollection of meeting this lady, none whatsoever. Few words, but very revealing. The first one is this: I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. No recollection. He's not ruling out that he may have met Virginia. He's just saying, I have no recollection. And that's a really hard one for people to get around because how do we prove what people can remember or not remember without looking inside their heads? We can't. So this is a really safe thing for him to do, because if he has met her and it later comes out that, there is more evidence of this meeting, then he can say, I didn't lie. So I've got the safety of saying, no, I didn't lie. I said I had no recollection of meeting her. I didn't say I hadn't met her. I ruled out meeting her entirely. It's just, I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever. Now, this lady, wow, that is kind of dismissive of this person making the allegations about him. This could be a little bit of his royalness and prim and properness coming through. This lady might be a very polite way of referring to a woman, but I've no recollections of ever meeting this lady. Certainly no warmth in there whatsoever. And, you know, again, if someone was making allegations against you, you might not have any warmth towards them. If they were false allegations, you may have no warmth towards them. If they're true, you definitely will not have warmth towards them. But this lady says, no warmth towards her. And then he says, none whatsoever at the end. Now, you'll notice that that doesn't change the meaning of the sentence. If none whatsoever wasn't present, his answer would be, I've no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever doesn't change the content, the meaning of the sentence. It just, well, I think in his words, strengthens it, but it's extra. It doesn't need to be said because no recollection is none whatsoever. He's repeating himself. So he really wants to persuade us or get across to us, convince us that he's no recollection of this. None whatsoever. Now, the none whatsoever is an interesting thing because it suggests that there is a recollection. He's just telling us that it doesn't exist. None whatsoever there. So that is the very first answer about Virginia Roberts. And yeah, it leaves me with kind of 3 red flags already in all of this. Emily asks him, you don't remember meeting her? He says, no. Now, no's straightforward enough answer, but it's very short. There's no content. There's nothing at the end of it to say, no, I don't remember meeting her. Emily continues, she says she met you in 2001. She dined with you. She danced with you. You bought her drinks. You were in Tramp nightclub in London, and she went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell. And Andrew's answer is, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Now, you'll notice that there's lots of allegations there. Let's count them. She met you in 2001, dined with you, danced with you. You bought her drinks, went on to have sex in a house belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell. Lots of things, but it didn't happen. Is he wrapping all those allegations just into one singular it? Or is it not very reliable? It's not those things did not happen. It's just an it didn't happen. We don't really know because he's not being very explicit with it, what he means by that it. Emily says, do you remember her? He says, no. Now, it's a yes-no question, and he starts with no, which I like to see. But then he goes on to say more. Do you remember her? No would be a fine answer. No, I don't remember her. It's be exactly what he's stuck to. It would be consistent, but he goes extra to offer a hell of a lot more. I've no recollection of ever meeting her, he says. In fact, I'm convinced that I was never in Tramps with her. So I've no recollection of ever meeting her. Once more, is this no recollection. It's not I didn't. It's this I've no recollection of ever meeting her. Well, again, it's just ever meeting her. It just suggests that in his thought process is the fact that, yeah, I could have met her. I just don't have a recollection of it. I'm convinced that I was never in Tramps with her. He was going to say, I'm almost convinced I was never in Tramps with her, but he realizes that's a little bit woolly there. I'm almost convinced. But he says, in fact, I'm convinced that I was never in Tramps. It was all about Tramps, not about the fact that he went to Ghislaine Maxwell's house and had sex with her. Or potentially worse is what the allegations are, I guess. He's just dealing with the Tramps part of the allegation here. Tramps is a nightclub, if that's not clear. There are a number of things that are wrong with that story. One of which is, I don't know where the bar in Tramps is. I don't drink. I don't think I've ever bought a drink in Tramps whenever I was there. Let's break all that down. There are a number of things wrong with that story. And again, it's all about Tramps. It's not about having sex in Ghislaine Maxwell's house. But also, how weird is it? Things that are wrong with the story. I don't know where the bar in Tramps is. I've bought drinks from places. I've not been to the bar. So, there are other ways of buying drinks rather than being at the bar. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the specific allegation from Virginia is that they were at the bar at all. But I don't know where the bar is in Tramps. This is also oozing a little bit of entitlement. I don't have to buy drinks in Tramps and go to the bar like a common person. But I don't know where the bar in Tramps is. Doesn't convince me that you didn't go back to Ghislaine Maxwell's house, I'm afraid. And I don't drink. Man, I know lots of people that don't drink, but they have bought me drinks in the past. And then I don't think I've ever bought a drink in Tramps whenever I was there. Well, Great. I don't think that's qualified. That's not, again, something that rules out the fact that this could have happened. And you'll notice that none of this rules out the fact this could have happened. And he really doesn't deal with the allegations about going to Ghislaine Maxwell's house with Virginia or the sex part of the allegation. So in that first part that we've looked at, we have this repeated no recollection pattern here, which is really easy to say, hard for anyone else to prove. And then there's just some distant and some real partial denials of what was there. So let's have a look and see what is being said in that chat. I know there's a lot of people saying they don't like Prince Andrew in the chat. That's absolutely fine. Shaman Ray, I have no recollection ever as an extra stressor, which is very telling. Yes, again, it's that extra thing. It's not just I have no recollection. Ever is just turning up the severity again. Ever doesn't change the meaning of the content there at all. It just adds to it. It suggests there's some persuasion going on there. Erin Chase, hi Erin. What is it, Andrew? Yes, exactly. He's not defining what it is. Kind of like he's leaving himself a whole load of loopholes as he talks here, so that if ever anything that is put to him is proved to be true, he can say, I didn't lie. I didn't deny it. I just said I had no allegation of it, or I said it, but I only meant the last thing that was mentioned to me, or the middle thing that was meant to me. He doesn't actually say what it is. I'd be more reassured by his denial if he said it. We also have Sheila saying, Andrew extra digs a hole for himself. Andrew's extra digs a hole for himself. Yeah, he goes extra. And when someone goes extra, again, I think, he has prepared for this, and quite rightly, he's prepared for this, but he's asked a question that a no would suffice, and he feels like he has to get one of the pre-prepared stories off the script and go, right, what are we going to do? What extra am I going to say here? Hello, Teresa. Whoa, I don't know where Tramp says, bought a drink in Tramps whenever I was there. Yeah, it's all a bit, strange there. Did Emily even ask about a bar? Says Sheila. No, she didn't. I would give some grace to that if the actual allegation, and I'm not familiar with the ins and outs of all the allegations, if the actual allegation was around a bar. But again, Sheila, this could be the fact that he has this pre-prepared rebuttal about, I don't know where the bar is, I don't drink, and he's crowbarred it in somewhere where it doesn't actually fit. Right, let's go back and look at the next part of him talking about this. Emily says, do you remember dancing at Tramp? And he says, no, that couldn't have happened because the date that is being suggested, I was at home with the children. Now, this is a narrower denial than the one that he gave before. So the first time he was asked about Tramp, it was, I don't drink. I don't know where the bar is. I don't think I've ever bought anyone a drink at Tramp. Actually, the denial is, I was at home. That would have been a much better one to lead with. It's very, very, very straightforward. I couldn't have been at Tramp on that night because I was at home. So I don't know why this one comes second, but it does. Let me just move on to the next thing. Emily saying, you were at home with the children. Was it a memorable night? And Andrew says, on that particular day that we now understand is the date, which is the 10th of March, I was at home. I was with the children. I'd taken Beatrice to Pizza Express in Woking for a party at, I suppose, sort of 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then because the Duchess was away, we have a simple rule in the family that when one is away, the other is there. I was on terminal leave at the time from the Royal Navy, so therefore I was at home. Let's look at that answer. On that particular day, which I'm wondering who we now understand, so that again, look, there's nothing much going on there to say that there's more than him involved in this. He's just a front man for all this. We now understand is the 10th of March, I was at home. And how does he remember he was at home? He remembers he was home because he was out. He wasn't at home. So he will tell us nothing about remembering being at home. He will tell us that he remembers he went out. I was with the children and I'd taken Beatrice to a Pizza Express in Woking for a party at, I suppose, 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Now that, don't know what time Tramps opens, but that does not preclude you from going to a nightclub later on there. I was in Pizza Express in Woking. That doesn't mean that you weren't there at Tramps later on that night. It's a really weak rebuttal. And I suppose sort of 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then because the Duchess was away, we have a simple rule in the family that when one is away, the other one is there. I was on terminal leave at the time from the Royal Navy, so therefore I was at home. I mean, I've been on leave before. It doesn't necessarily mean that I was at home. I'm not really sure that this stands up to any kind of scrutiny at all. It's just, therefore, I was at home because I wasn't in the Navy at the time. Emily says, why would you remember that so specifically? Why would you remember a Pizza Express birthday and being at home? Because being to Pizza Express and Woking is an unusual thing for me to do, says Prince Andrew. A very unusual thing for me to do. I've only been to Woking a couple of times, and I remember it weirdly distinctly. As soon as somebody reminded me of it, I went, oh, yes, I remember that. But I have no recollection of ever meeting or being in the company or the presence, and it drifts away. So going to Pizza Express in Woking is an unusual thing for me to do, a very unusual thing for me to do. I've only been to Woking a couple of times, and I remember it weirdly distinctly. So he's saying there he remembers it, but he only remembers it because someone reminded him of it. So how weirdly distinctly does he remember it? Oh, yes, I remember that. Now, you'll see that he can remember things when it suits him, but I have no recollection of ever meeting or being in the company or the presence, and it drifts away. I think that was because he realized the question was about Pizza Express. Again, he's gone into one of these pre-prepared lines. I've no recollection of meeting or being in the company of, he doesn't actually say. It continues with Emily saying, so you're absolutely sure you were at home on the 10th of March? And Andrew says, yeah. Interesting. He's used yes before, and here we have the slightly more slangy yeah. So in this part, I see some controlling, commanding language. Some of you have picked up on that as well. You know, it was so therefore I was at home. This is someone who is used to having their word taken. So therefore I was at home. It's odd that his memory of being at home is actually not being at home. It's being at Pizza Express and Woking. That's a very strange way of knowing that you were at home. And he remembers it weirdly distinctly, but only after someone mentioned it. So let's have a look and see what is being said in the chat here. Shaman Ray, Emily doesn't mention a specific date for dancing at Tramps. Now, that's interesting. She does leave it very open. I wonder if that was one of her things of she would keep this open and not tie it down to certain dates in order for it to be open, but he's closed it down to just that one date. Sheila says, I was at home twice. He's trying to convince us. Oh, yes, Sheila, he does want to convince us that he was at home. The things we repeat, especially when we are under stress, maybe lying, maybe telling the truth, but the things we repeat are the things that we really want people to hear. We want to make sure that they've heard them, and we want to make sure that through repetition, it becomes more believable. Shaman Ray says there, Emily doesn't mention a specific date for dancing at Tramps, yet he still denies dancing there. A good catch there. Erin says, home from the Royal Navy status. Therefore, I couldn't have done it. Yes, he is playing on his status. Look at me. I'm a good guy. I was in the Royal Navy at the time. Therefore, I, was protecting my country, doing all the good things. I'm just going to throw that one in there. I was home from the Royal Navy. And Snoozy Girl says he takes every opportunity he can to mention the Navy, going in around the same things there. So thank you for that. Let's carry on with more from this here interview. So Emily says, she was very specific about the night she described dancing with you. And Andrew says, no. Don't know what he's saying no to. But wow, it was, there is something going on there. And you profusely sweating. And that she went on to have a bath, possibly. And let's get into Prince Andrew's sweat story. I am going to read you the full answer here. There was a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time. And that was it? Yes, I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at. And it was almost impossible for me to sweat. There was a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition. I have present tense. What he's saying there is at the time of the interview, I have a peculiar medical condition, which is present tense. I don't sweat. So this is all present tense when he introduces this sweating medical condition, this mysterious condition. I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat. And then he changes it to be in the past. Or I didn't sweat at the time. So now he's changing the tense of this and moving it backwards. And that was it? Yes, I didn't sweat at the time. He's starting to stutter there. I think he realizes that he has kind of cocked up a little bit there and said the condition is in the present and not in the past. I'm thinking there, potentially, if you were going to make up a story about not being able to sweat and someone saw you sweat, for example, if you're being interviewed under television lights, you may sweat and then you might get caught. So he has to say, this is in the past. I didn't sweat at the time. I have suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War. Erin, you may want to use status at this point. Get something in there and say status with that one. An overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War. It's what I would describe, which is his definition there. You know, he doesn't go with any medical definition of this peculiar medical condition. Would the doctors describe it as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War, which was what, 80s? Early 1980s. Anyway, when I was shot at, and it was almost impossible for me to sweat. Almost impossible, not impossible. So his rebuttal of Virginia remembering him sweating is that he could sweat because it was only almost impossible for me to sweat, which is such a strange denial of what is put there. First of all, he does it in the present tense, then it moves into the past tense. He is kind of self-diagnosing here, and he still says he was able to sweat because it was almost impossible for me to sweat. And he carries on. I would have shut up then, but he carries on. And it's only because I have done a number of things in the recent past that I am starting to be able to do that again. So he is starting to be able to sweat again in his words here. However, he says, I don't sweat when he started doing the answer. So he's contradicting himself on the way through there. I'm starting to be able to do that again. So I'm afraid to say there is a medical condition that says I didn't do it. So therefore, there is a medical condition that says, well, medical conditions can't speak, that says I didn't do it. Again, what is it? He doesn't say a medical condition to say that I didn't sweat. Well, you told us that you could almost not sweat. This is all over the place. It just doesn't come across as believable or authentic at all. Emily says, is it possible that you met Virginia Roberts, dined with her, danced with her in Tramp, had sex with her on another date? And he says no. And this time he doesn't go extra. He sticks to that no. Do you remember meeting her at all? No. But you'll notice the question is, do you remember meeting her at all? Easy enough to say that no, I don't remember, because again, we can't prove it. Do you know that you didn't meet her, or do you just not remember meeting her? This is the big question. This is the one that we've been looking for. It's not about your remembrance. It's about what actually happened. Do you know you didn't meet her, or do you just not remember meeting her? Andrew says, no. And he could have left it at that, or expanded. No, I didn't meet her. I have. I don't know if I've met her or not. I have, but met her, but not. Met her, but not. That's what the transcript says. I have no recollection of meeting her. So he is exceedingly open to the fact that he could have met her, because he will not say, I did not meeting her. He will only stick to, I have no recollection of meeting her. I don't know if I've met her or not. He's open to the fact that he could have met her. Emily says, because she was very specific. She described the dance that you had together in Tramp. She described meeting you. She was a 17-year-old girl meeting a senior member of the royal family. And he says, it never happened. It, again, just turning it all down. And what exactly does he mean by it? Then we've got the word never. Now, never doesn't mean someone's lying, but it's an absolute. It never happened, which is interesting because we've got a hell of a lot more. I've no recollection of meeting her, and now he's saying it never happened. He's contradicting himself there. So in that part there, he is leaning on his memory and the excuse of the memory, but he's open to the fact that he could have met her. He is open to that in his words, that he could have met her. And the sweating explanation is so weak. What are you guys saying? Cindy, hi, Cindy. Are you drinking, Cindy? I don't mean in an alcoholic sense. Just whenever Cindy gets in touch, she always tells me that she was getting some content with a cup of coffee or a red wine. You'll probably be at work, so I would hope you don't have a red wine right now. Watching his face in that interview was priceless. He was so uncomfortable. Yeah, he was, and I wish we could show the video, but the BBC won't allow that. Carol says, undergoing shock and trauma to his sweat glands. Well, that certainly seems to be what happened to the guy. Sheila just says, good Lord, at this point. And Teresa, almost only counts as horseshoes and hand grenades. Almost just does not work at all. Such waffle, says Panic at the Discourse. Yeah, I gotta go with that. Now, Carol is sweating now, just thinking about what was going on there. Afton says, Mom says BS and she's an MD. I'm presuming that's your mom, Afton. Actually, Andrew's mom is no longer with us, so it will be your mom that says that. I would buy that as well. The story just does not stack up. Snoozy Girl, was he in the Navy? He never said. Yeah, he was in the Navy and was in the Falklands as well, just in case you didn't get the impression. I'm afraid to say, are you though, says Panic at the Discord. Yes, I'm afraid to say that, nothing could have happened because I had this medical condition. Carol, doctors have refuted the sweat story. They say it's almost unheard of. I like your use of almost there. Is that ironic? And Shaman Ray, he is saying, no, he hasn't met her now, yet he merely has no recollection previously. He contradicts himself, Shaman Ray, and we should not ignore the fact that the guy has contradicted himself. Let's get some more from Prince Andrew. And this is him talking about the infamous photo of himself and Ghislaine Maxwell and Virginia Giuffre. We have Emily saying she provided a photo of you two together. And Andrew says, yes. Interesting sort of acknowledgement that was done. Your arm around her waist, he says, yes. And I want you to remember that as we go through it. Emily says, your arm was around her waist in this photo. And he says, yes. Doesn't argue with it, agrees with it. He says, yes. She says, you've seen the photo. He says, I've seen the photograph. How do you explain that? Andrew says, I can't because I have absolutely no memory of that photograph ever being taken. How do you explain that? He gets very stuttery. I can't because I don't. I can't because I don't have any explanation. We cannot guess and we cannot say what it is that he was thinking there, but what was he going on to say? And I have no recollection would be, I think, maybe what he would be reaching for there. Again, I have absolutely no memory of that photograph ever being taken. So we've got the word absolutely there, very like never. Doesn't mean someone's lying, but you'll notice, again, if we take the word absolutely out, the sentence doesn't change its meaning. Again, I have no memory of that photograph ever being taken. Again, I have absolutely no memory of that ever being taken. And absolutely suggests he's trying really hard to persuade or convince us that he has only no memory of that photograph ever being taken. Not at that time, just ever being taken. And also, you'll notice that the no memory is very slight. It's only of that photograph being taken. It's not of meeting Virginia Giuffre or being in Ghislaine Maxwell's presence with Virginia either. It's just the photograph being taken. Emily says, do you recognize yourself in the photo? And Andrew just gives one of the most pompous answers that he gives, which is, yes, it's pretty difficult not to recognize yourself. Well done. Emily says, your friend suggested that the photo is fake. Now, there's some going on in the chat. Let's just pull it up, where Sheila is saying he claimed the photo was fake, and then Panic replies, he implied it heavily, but he didn't outright say it. And that's exactly right. Let's look at the actual words that are there. Your friend suggested that the photo is fake. He says, I think it's, from the investigations that we've done, you can't prove whether or not that photograph is faked or not, because it is a photograph of a photograph of a photograph. So it's very difficult to be able to prove it, but I don't remember that photograph ever being taken. So he doesn't come out there and say that photograph is a fake. You can't prove whether or not that photograph is faked, is the nearest he goes, i.e. it's possible it's faked, which also means it's possible it's not. He doesn't commit to saying anything, this photograph has to be a fake. He doesn't say anything like that. He sits on the fence with absolutely everything. I have no recollection of meeting her, but I could have. You can't prove whether the photograph is faked, but it could be real. He sits on the fence everywhere so that if ever anything comes up that could contradict anything he says, he can say, no, I just said I could be faked. Didn't say it was faked. It's a photograph of a photograph of a photograph. So it's very difficult to be able to prove it. But I don't remember. I mean, we should have a drinking thing game going on here. I don't remember that photograph ever being taken. And we've got that extra ever again, which I think was it Shaman Ray pointed out. He uses this extra ever, which isn't needed there to make this sentence mean anything better. It's just that extra persuasive thing. Emily says, but is it possible that it was your arm around her waist? Now, will you remember at the very beginning, let's just go back and look at his words. There is that photograph, your arm was around her waist, and he says, yes. Is it possible that it was you with your arm around her waist? He says, that's me, but whether that's my hand, whether that's the position, I have simply no recollection of the photograph ever being taken. So he's asked a very direct question. Is it possible that it was you with your arm around her waist? And he says, that's me. So it is him in the photograph. Look, he's saying it's him in the photograph. He's not really saying that it's a real photograph at this point. He's just saying this picture of him. Whether that's my hand, well, you agreed your arm was around her at the very beginning. Your arm is around her, yes. Whether that's the position, what? But I don't. I have, and I think here he starts to flounder, which is why we get whether that's the position, but I don't. And then he seems to fluster, so he just goes on to the fallback, and we all know what the fallback is by now. I have simply no recollection of the photograph ever being taken. And we'll see. The only thing in the question is about the arm. Is it possible that it was you with your arm around her waist? But he goes into, well, my hand and no recollection of all this. He goes extra because he just starts to flounder around this. Emily's next question. The world has now seen that photo that Virginia Roberts provided, taken by Epstein, we understand, in Ghislaine Maxwell's house. And he goes with the convincing language again. Well, here's the problem. I've never seen Epstein with a camera in my life. Well, here's the problem. Sort of authority. Here's the problem. I'm going to tell you, little lady, what the problem is. I've never seen Epstein with a camera in my life. Now, look again, the allegations that are put is that this was taken in Ghislaine Maxwell's house. It's proof that he met Virginia Roberts. But what he's going to say is, I've never seen Epstein with a camera in my life. He takes on the very smallest part of that. We've got the word never in there again, which I've already covered. And then we've got this big absolute, in my life. In my life, I've never seen Epstein with a camera. What? Ever? Emily says, I think it was Virginia Roberts' camera. She said a little Kodak one that she lent to Epstein. He took a photo and your arm is around her waist. And he says, listen. And that, again, is that commanding language. Listen. I don't remember that photograph ever being taken. I don't remember going upstairs in that house because that photograph was taken upstairs. And I'm not entirely convinced that, that is what I would describe as me in that picture, but we can't be certain as to whether or not that's my hand on her, whatever it is, left side. And we can see the stuttering coming up here. And he feels like he's a little bit on the racks. And we're going to see an interesting change in a minute. So we've got, listen, that commanding. I don't remember. If we were doing shots for every time he said he didn't remember something, we would now be falling off air. And I'd be saying bye-bye because, again, I don't remember. I don't remember going upstairs in that house because that photograph was taken upstairs. Now, I'm interested in this. How do you know that photograph was taken upstairs? Number one, you're admitting the photograph was taken upstairs because you're saying that photograph was taken upstairs, which is kind of an embedded confession that you believe the photograph, that it's real. That photograph was taken upstairs, and I don't remember being upstairs in the house. No, I haven't been upstairs in the house for sure. I've never gone up those stairs. No, it's just I'm not entirely convinced that. That is what I would describe as me in that picture, but we can't be certain as to whether or not that's my hand on whatever it is, left side. I can't, we can't. I think this is going into the fact that he's got other people that are working on this as well, and he's not going to take ownership for this. So again, a little bit of denial here. I'm the prince, and if I screw up, I'm going to blame my people. That's why I'm saying we can't. I can't, we can't, whether or not that's my hand on whatever it is, left side. He's continually asked about her arm. He took a photo and your arm is around her waist. The question before was about arm as well. However, he keeps talking about my hand there. So yeah, very interesting. Emily says, you think that? And he interrupts and says, because I have no recollection of that photograph ever being taken. Can we all be really clear? Because he said it many times. He has no recollection of that photograph ever being taken. Emily says, so why would somebody put in another hand? You think it is next to her in the photograph? He says, oh, it's definitely me. I mean, that's a picture of me. It's not a picture of, I don't believe it's a picture of me in London, because when I go out in London, I wear a suit and tie. That is what I would describe as, those are my traveling clothes. If I'm going overseas, I've got plenty of photographs of me dressed in that sort of kit, but not there. Decipher that word salad, because I can't. I think what he's trying to say is there's plenty of photographs of him dressed in those sort of clothes, but not there. Well, I've got plenty of photographs. That's not necessarily what's on Virginia's camera, is it? She has one of those. Just to clarify, sorry, you think the photo has been faked, says Emily. And once again, he will not come up and say it for real. He will not come up and say, yeah, I think the photograph is faked. Nobody can prove whether or not that photograph has been doctored, but I don't recollect that photograph ever being taken. He really wants to get that across. You think the photo was faked? Nobody can prove whether or not that photograph has been doctored. Ends. But no, he's got to go extra and do his real extra there. I don't recollect that photograph ever being taken. Emily says, and you don't recollect having your hand? Andrew interrupts and says, no. And she continues, round her waist in Ghislaine Maxwell's house on any occasion, even if it was a different date. And he says, I'm terribly sorry, but if I, as a member of the royal family, and I've had a photograph taken, and I take very, very few photographs, I am not one to, as it were, hug, and public displays of affection are not something that I do. So here we have him going on, and he's not got anywhere with some of the convincing, commanding, controlling, do listen to me sort of language. He realizes, and you can see there, Emily asks him a question and he tries to cut it off by interrupting with a no, and she continues. So what he does is he borrows a bit of authority. I am a member of the royal family. Kind of remember who you're talking to. I have photographs taken. I have very, very few photographs. I am not one to, as it were, hug, and public displays of affection are not something that I do. This is not really a public display of affection. This is the upstairs of one of your friend's house. Yeah, I'm not sure I buy that. I don't even understand it very much. So that's the best explanation I can give you. I think this might be internal thinking leaking out. Crap, I'm really against the ringer here. The best thing I can do is say these things. That's the best explanation I can give you. You haven't given us any explanation at all, because although you've alluded to the fact you think this picture might be taken of you overseas because you're wearing your kit, you haven't said it outright. You haven't said this picture cannot be me in London, because when I'm in London, I'm wearing a suit and tie. This is my traveling gear. So this picture must have been taken of me overseas and not upstairs in Ghislaine Maxwell's house. Although that wouldn't hang together very well. So this is just the best explanation I can give you. It's crap, by the way, but it's the best explanation I can give you. And I'm afraid to say, Panic, you can pop up now and say he's not afraid to say it at all. I don't believe that photograph was taken in the way that has been suggested. So in that extract there, borrowed authority. His authority is running out, so he's using the royal family authority there now. Again, he will not commit to ruling anything in or out. The photograph being fake could be fake. Nobody can prove it. He wants to get out the fact doctored, faked is what he's going to say, but he's not explicitly saying that. Why? Because if it comes out that's a real photograph and he said it's faked, he's going to look bad. He just doesn't deny the photograph at all. The only question he has, the real question he has about it, is the positioning of his hand. Right, let's see what you guys have been saying in the chat because you have been very active. Sheila says he claimed the photograph was fake. Oh yeah, we handled that one. Cindy gets in touch with a drink update. She is at work, but she will drink that wine in a few hours. A woman after my own heart. Carol, he has a memory like Swiss cheese. Yes, he has no recollection. Sheila wants Andrew to stop talking. Well, I'm actually doing the words for him, so as long as you're all right with me talking, that's okay, Sheila. Shaman Ray says, that's me leaking admission. I think in that whole part about the photograph, we do have leaked admissions that he knows this is a genuine photograph of him, and everything he has to say around it is just leaks of stress and leaks of him acknowledging that this is a photograph of him. But yeah, when he talked about positions, panic, I had the same thought. Is he thinking back on other positions? Certainly, he was talking about positions in relationship to positions with Virginia. I think that could well be the case. Sheila, not that he wasn't in the house. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't quite know which part of stories to deny, does he? Because Emily puts to him quite built narrative accusations. She doesn't just say, you had sex with Virginia Giuffre. No, I didn't. Boom, boom, closed off easily. It's that you were in Tramp, you danced with her, you bought her drinks, then you went to Virginia's house, Ghislaine Maxwell's house, and so on. And he doesn't quite know how to shut those down. I think he's got everything locked off one by one, but when she puts the whole thing to him, he just does not know how to shut that down. I'll save Erin's one for the end. How did he know it was upstairs, says Auntie M, and I think also Katie says that as well. Sorry, Kay says that as well. How did he know it was upstairs if he's not been upstairs? I had the exact same thought. What I would say is you can see a downward staircase in the full picture, so that may be where he gets that from. But yeah, I was a bit suspicious about how he knew what the upstairs was if he hadn't been upstairs. Carol says, we can't as a way of distancing himself. Agree with that, Carol. That's the we can't say. It's what's happened with it. So if there is any balls ups here, it's on his people as much as it is on him. The cringe is real, says Panic at the Discourse. I'm feeling you. Sheila says, no recollection is his favorite phrase. Boy, is it. Panic. This is a prince who was in the Navy. I'll have you know, yes, it's all the authority. I'm a member of the royal family. Sheila, I'm a royal family, the royal family, you ordinary person. There is a real entitlement there of, you know, how dare you do that? I was preparing for this, and I'm not sure I would have been comfortable doing this episode 20 years ago. I know some stories about people who did investigative journalism into the royal family at times, and yeah, didn't always go well for them. And Erin Chase, I'll finish off with this one in this section. This guy, what a tool. I think you're probably summing up a lot of the chat there. Let's have a look at another bit here. Emily says, why would people not believe that you were there? Why would people not believe that you were there? And Andrew says, I'm sorry, why would? So this is Emily putting to him about the why do your friends think this is faked? And he doesn't seem to have an answer for that. So he asks the question, I'm sorry, why would, so that he gets himself some more thinking time. Emily says, I'm just trying to understand. There's a photo inside Ghislaine Maxwell's house, Ghislaine herself in the background. Why would people not believe that you were there with her that night? He says, they might well wish to believe it, but the photograph is taken upstairs, and I don't think I ever went upstairs in Ghislaine's house. What I've got to point out there is I don't think I ever went upstairs in Ghislaine's house. No, I haven't. So once more, he's on this fence that he will not commit to absolutely anything. It's just, I don't think I went upstairs in Ghislaine's house. Again, if anything is proven to be true, he can say, I didn't lie. I said I didn't think I'd been upstairs. I didn't categorically say I had not been upstairs. Are you sure of that? He said, yeah. So are you sure of that? Yeah, because the dining room and everything was on the ground floor, was as you came in the hall. So I don't remember ever going up there. I'm at a loss to explain this particular photograph. If the original were ever produced, then perhaps we might be able to solve it, but I can't. He doesn't say how he knows it was upstairs and he believes there's an original of the photograph. There's a lot going on there. He doesn't tell us, he tells us some stuff about downstairs. Yeah, because the dining room and everything was in the ground floor, but he doesn't finish the thought off. When I went to Ghislaine's, I only ever was in her dining room. or used the downstairs bathroom. I don't know. That could be the sort of thing that he would want to say. I had no need to ever go upstairs. That's where Ghislaine lived, but when she entertained, it was always the ground floor that was used. That could be a way of finishing off the thought, but he doesn't, which is really an indication that it's not an authentic experience or opinion. Yeah, because the dining room and everything was on the ground floor, was as you came in the hall. So I don't remember ever going there. I'm at a loss to explain this particular photograph. And he's just gone back onto the scripty parts. Instead of shutting up and saying, yeah, don't think I ever went upstairs. He goes back to saying, I'm at a loss to explain this particular photograph. If the original was ever produced, then perhaps we may be able to solve it, but I can't. So if the original was ever produced, it's not if the original was found or if there is an original. He's talking about a definitive original. If the original was ever produced, and I think what is going on here is that the fact that this is a replica of a photograph, etc., is being used or weaponized to say, oh, it's not an original photograph, therefore there might be something dodgy about it. But he's admitting right there that if the original, which is in his mind, he believes there is an original in his word, was ever produced, we might be able to solve it. Emily says, but can you say categorically that you don't recall meeting Virginia Roberts, dining with her? Yep. Dancing with her at Tramp? Yep. Or going on to have sex with her? Yes, he says. A little bit of a pattern breakdown there where it's yep, yes. In a bedroom in a house in Belgravia. I can absolutely categorically tell you it never happened. Finally, we have a little bit of something, which is that I can absolutely categorically tell you it never happened. But once again, what is he denying there? It's never happened. We've got the word never there, and we've got this absolutely categorically. We've got absolutely and never in the same answer, which is like, boom, something for Never a Truer Word fans there. I can absolutely categorically tell you it never happened. He wants to really, really hard say that this never happened. Do you recall any kind of sexual contact with Virginia Roberts then or at any other time? None whatsoever, he says. Again, we've got this overly persuasive language. None whatsoever. Emily then says, so if Virginia Roberts is watching this interview, what is your message for her? And this is a very interesting one. I don't have a message for her because I have to have a thick skin. If somebody is going to make those sorts of allegations, then I've got to have a thick skin and get on with it. But they never happened. I don't have a message for her because I have to have a thick skin. No? I get what he's trying to say. I get what he's trying to say is, I'm not affected by this. I've got a thick skin. It's fine. Make allegations if you want. I've got a thick skin and I'm not going to let them hurt me. But he doesn't finish that thought off. Also, again, it shows a slight dismissiveness to Virginia Roberts. Maybe he should have offered something a little warmer, but there's no warmth towards her whatsoever. If somebody is going to make those sorts of allegations, and you'll see all this distancing, he doesn't address her directly. If she is going to make these sorts of allegations, it's just if somebody is going to make those sorts of allegations. So he's not talking about this precise allegation. We'll know that, he did reach a settlement with her at some point, didn't he? So he did have something to say, would you like some money? If somebody, so it's not necessarily Virginia, he's widening it out here, is going to make those sorts of allegations, so it's not the allegations that Virginia's made, it's just those sorts of allegations, then I've got to have a thick skin and get on with it. But they never happened. And once again, we have a denial in there, but it's a denial of what? It's they never happened. For the record, says Emily, is there any way you could have had sex with that young woman or any young woman trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein in any of his residencies? No, is the first thing he says. And he could have left it at that. But my God, does he start going extra and burying himself in a hole? No. And without putting too fine a point on it, if you're a man, it is a positive act to have sex with somebody. You've got to take some sort of positive action. So therefore, if you try to forget, it's very difficult to try and forget a positive action. and I do not remember anything. I can't. I racked my brain thinking when the allegations came out originally. So let's just look at this bit here. So if you're a man, it's a positive act to have sex with somebody. I don't understand that whatsoever. If you're a woman, is it not a positive act to have sex with somebody as well? But for a man, it's a positive act. You have to take some sort of positive action. You have to take some sort of positive action. I mean, this really feels not like a two-way thing that he's describing. That the man has to take. If you're a man, you have to take some sort of positive action. That is not right. And so, therefore, if you try to forget, it's very difficult to try and forget a positive action. Have I missed this chapter in the book, or did I miss this class in school? It's very difficult to try and forget a positive action. No, I don't know what he's talking about, and I do not remember anything. Why would you know how difficult it is to try and forget a positive action? I can't. I've racked my brain and thinking when the allegations came out originally, I went, well, that's a bit strange. Now that's an interesting reaction. That's a bit strange. Which is, someone made those allegations about me. That's a bit strange, would not be there. My thoughts would be more around, what? Disgusting? How could someone do that to me? Why? Not, that's a bit strange. I don't remember this. We've just got this complete memory blank, like he's been zapped by one of those men in black, the zapper things from the film. I don't remember this. And then I've been through it and through it and through it and over again and know nothing. It just never happened. It's all about remembering if it happened or not about whether it happened. Have you noticed that all of this is about whether he remembers it? It's very little, apart from that very last thing at the end there, it just never happened, which has got just and never in the same sentence, which is another classic for the ages. Everything is about remembering whether it happened or not whether it happened or not. And that is Prince Andrew talking about Virginia Giuffre. Let's have a look at the comments that you have put in on that one. He seems to know the house well, says Sheila Duffy. Oh, yes, he does. Although I guess he did say he was a friend of Ghislaine. Kelly did ask, what does Ghislaine have to say? I'd love to know what Ghislaine has to say. Although Carol does say Ghislaine said the photo was fake. I'm not aware of that. But given what Ghislaine has done with her life, I'm not sure whether what she has to say has a lot of veracity. Panic at the Discourse, he's cocky about knowing the material was destroyed. Now, this is the photographs. Interesting. It does seem to be something that he's quite sure of. If the original were ever to come out, then I'd maybe reconsider it. Does he know that it's been destroyed? Good thought there. Also, Panic says going extra. Extra is Andrew's middle name, although he's not allowed to use it now. Teresa, I don't remember, but absolutely didn't happen. If you don't remember, how can you say it absolutely didn't happen? Yeah, there's a contradiction in his logic going on there. There are many things in my life I can't remember, but I would say they could have happened. I can't remember them. We have those conversations all the time, especially with family members. Do you remember this happening? No, I don't remember that, but I'll take your word for it that it happened. You're open to the fact that that could have happened. Sheila spotted lots of ly words there. That's words like absolutely, categorically, they end in ly. These ones are the persuasive ly words. Where watch for words that end with ly when someone's talking to you. They will either be those persuasive words like absolutely and categorically, or there will be ones with loopholes in like basically and probably there. Yeah, Auntie he knew it was, well, the thought of the way he describes the action is it was a man, and all the actions of a man that led to sex was slightly worrying, a slightly strange way of describing that to me. Shaman Ray, I do not remember anything, is still not a denial. There are some denials in there. There are some denials, but they are kind of few and far between, and they don't really add up. Pause for Andrea. Looking forward to hearing about this. Catch you on the replay. Thank you for that. And I think Sheila gets the emojis exactly right for what we feel about Prince Andrew here. So there we go. Do have a watch of the interview. I mean, Kelly puts it in the chat there saying do watch the interview because it is very, very messy indeed. But do I think that on the basis of that, Prince Andrew did meet and interact in the ways that are alleged with Virginia Giuffre, or Virginia Roberts as she was at the time. I agree with Prince Andrew. It's all very possible that it could happen because it is in his words that that is what could have happened. And we should believe the words that we hear. So that's Prince Andrew wrapped up. Thank you very much for joining me live, or if you're in the replay crew, thank you very much for taking all of this in. If you are replay people, then do comment. If you give this a like Sheila said, give this a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more episodes like this, or recommend it to other people as well, because a lot of people, and this is a very serious issue. Even if you take Andrew and Virginia out of it and look at the power imbalances and the taking advantage of vulnerable people and so on, learning a bit more about what has gone on and what's possible to have gone on by looking at someone's language is an incredibly powerful thing to do. So share this or recommend this to anyone who's interested in those sorts of things, because that also just helps this get out to even more people. So thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word.